And then I think they really misused Bane. I was really looking forward to Bane because I was thinking, even if I don't like the hero message in this movie, you know, well, at least they give me a great villain to root for, you know, and I felt like Bane really didn't end up standing for that much. I would have been happier if Bane had been actually more of the sort of class warrior that they were building him up to be in the trailers. He didn't really end up being that. Um, I mean, he should have been the central villain, obviously, because he was the one introduced from the beginning, and you allow that emotional tension of the two superheroes, you know, their final collision, you allow it to build up. That didn't happen. Instead, there was a switch in at the end where it turned out he wasn't the central villain, he was just working for Ra's al Ghul's daughter, Talia al Ghul. That was lame. Okay. He should have more clearly stood for something. Um, there wasn't really much about why he wanted to destroy Gotham. Like, what was his motivation? Um, you know, okay, I understand he had a hard life, and he was like raised in a prison pit or lived in one, but I don't really see why that would automatically lead him to join the League of Shadows. You know, it wasn't like he lives on the other side of the world. I don't really see what he has to do with Gotham. Um, and actually, that this is the other thing I would have changed about the movie. You know, Batman should have been a playboy at the beginning who changed, and Bane should have been imprisoned in Gotham Prison, and he should have imprisoned Batman there. Because one of the whole contradictions and tensions of the Batman story is that, you know, and that's really did sort of come to light in this series, was that Batman is rich, and that he's fighting crime, but the people he's fighting are poor. And it's borderline his fault because, you know, he's a capitalist exploiter, or he's at least rich and not helping these poor people very much. And you know, it would have been really cool if Bane had sort of been Batman's fault, because Bane would have been, you know, raised in a Gotham prison, you know, a criminal from the poor of Gotham, living in contrast to Bruce Wayne, the rich of Gotham. And it would have been like, you know, almost like more like Batman's past mistakes and past negligence, you know, catching up to him. And yeah, there's another point I'll get to later. Honestly, I think Bane was a really weak revolutionary leader. I don't know if Christopher Nolan has ever been to Occupy, but like the way Bane operated was just totally weird and at odds with everything. Yeah, so he just sort of stood up as this clear leader and like declared the revolution. Whereas like, I don't know, if you've ever seen any of this stuff, you realize how messy it is and how there's no clear leader, how there may be leaders, but there's competition between them, and I don't know. And there was also this weird flaw in my head where what happened? Okay, Bane was trying to trigger this sort of popular uprising, but at the same time he was using tanks rolling down the streets, and anytime you saw the streets, it was like the streets were empty and everyone living in fear of the martial law. So you had martial law, then you had populist uprising, supposedly within the same action. And that makes no sense, because those things are complete opposites. And, you know, when people come out in the streets, they usually fight off the martial law. When the martial law, you know, gets imposed, it usually drives everyone out of the streets. You can't have those two things on the same side. And I think it really came out when Bane was talking, and when he was giving his speech before breaking the prison open. All there was to signify the popular participation in Bane's regime was just this stupid little montage during his speech. It was just like a stupid series of you know, short, you know, segments within his speech that showed people, like, you know, throwing the rich down stairwells and convening revolutionary courts. And but like there was never a flood into the streets. And I feel like if Christopher Nolan knows what's going on whatsoever in the world, in Egypt, in the USA, in Wisconsin, like, Bane should have caused a flood of mass participation into the streets. Otherwise, he's not, you know, a real, like, villainous leader of the 99% or something, you know? Which is really what I was hoping he would be. Whatever. Okay. Yeah, and that's honestly a big thing. And this is my next big point. That the movie failed in being relevant to things going on in the world. And, you know, you may think, well, that's a pretty high standard you're setting for for a superhero movie, but actually I don't think it is, because Dark Knight actually was very relevant. I did not like the political conclusions that Dark Knight came to, but it was about terrorism. And, we're sort of embroiled in a long-term war on terror. And, it dealt with that stuff. It had, I don't like the conclusion it made about, they're just some people who want to destroy the world for no reason. But, hey, it said something, and it gave us something to grapple with. I don't like the fact that, Batman basically built a giant cell phone surveillance system and then handed it off to Obama. Lucius Fox. But he did, and it was very relevant to the surveillance state that's used for counterterrorism. I don't like the conclusion he had, but it felt like part of reality. And this, they just sort of like made in Dark Knight Rises, they made like passing references to like the class warfare and hatred of the rich in society, but it didn't feel as integral to the plot as it did in The Dark Knight. And basically, it just felt like a cheap trick to get people to watch the movie because it seemed relevant, but it actually wasn't relevant. It was just another stupid superhero movie where a superhero defused a nuclear bomb or something. Like, that's completely lame. That's not what's going on in society. We're not, under the threat of some idiot setting a nuke off, where we have an emerging class war. We have mass popular protest. And even if Chris Nolan had brought that into his movie and condemned it, I still would have liked it more than just this muddled, stupid superhero movie that was just could have been any superhero movie and had nothing to do with anything. So yeah, all in all, most importantly, I would say that this movie ruined Batman for me, because I was hoping that at least it would be a reactionary conservative movie where Chris Nolan hated mass protest and hated class warfare. But it wasn't even that. It wasn't even like Batman became this uniting figure amongst... He never became a mass symbol for mass participation. I think there's a really good comic. I can't remember the name of it, but it's about one where Batman comes out of retirement. And by the end of it, he's, leading masses in the street. And I think that's where it has to go, because if you're going to be a symbol, it has to basically enter the level of, like, mass participation. It was almost like Batman became a leader instead of just a lone crime fighter. And I feel like, for the ideal of Batman to fully unfold, to fully expand, which is what they wanted to do. They wanted Batman to, like, become Gotham in this movie. They wanted him to, like, reach the level of Gotham City. I don't know. It just really did not pull it off, this movie. And I guess what I became convinced of is that while I have been attracted to, the sort of Nietzschean figure of this, person who operates illegally and lives by their own ethical code of justice, ultimately Batman kind of sucks. Ultimately, you can't really change Batman into something good. Ultimately, he's just a rich loser who fights crime without caring about where crime comes from, and he has no real solution for society, and never will. And the Batman series can never be turned into anything really significant because it can't address the real problem. It's just another lost superhero thinking he's making a difference when he's not. So yeah, I'm done with this crap. I'm done caring about movies, and I feel free. It's good. And finally, you all know that my favorite scene was when Bane shot up the stock exchange.